Earlier today, we finally got the gameplay trailer for EA Sports College Football 24, and I'm excited to dive deep into much of the talking points that were made during this video while analyzing and making my own conclusions of things that weren't mentioned in the video. The number one takeaway I have, though, is that this is very clearly not a Madden reskin. That's been the concern at the fan base, and understandably so, but I think EA has made it very clear that they are focused on making this a very different gaming experience. Many of the biggest Madden and college football creators were flown to Orlando last week to play the game. I was not one of them because I do not have that type of motion yet, but they made it very clear that this is not the same game, and their optimism was clear based on how they've been talking about the game, and after watching the trailer, I can't help but feel the same way. The most notable gameplay changes include wear and tear, player abilities, home field advantage, and unique playbooks, which we're going to touch upon in a second, but first I want to look at the presentation. The number one thing I notice is the score bug on the bottom, and I think it looks really clean. It reminds me a lot of the NBC score bug, although I would argue that the one in-game honestly looks a little bit better. Unfortunately, we're not getting any ESPN branding into the game this year, which does kind of suck, but I think the scoreboard here looks really nice. I was worried that it wasn't going to look good because I think Madden has not done the best job with that in recent years. But the presentation of this game looks awesome. Another thing I noticed in terms of the gameplay was that the color contrast feels a lot brighter and more colorful and vibrant, which I think is a good thing. I think it was Bengal who mentioned this on Twitter a couple days ago, and after watching the trailer, I can really see it. The color pops a lot more than Madden and some of the other sports games out there, which I think is also a big plus. Another small thing I noticed on Travis Hunter's player card is that he has a face scan. I'm expecting to not have many guys face scanned in the game because there's so many collegiate athletes on the 130 plus teams, but it is nice to know that many of the notable players will get face scanned in the game, whether it's just the guys on the cover or more players. Donovan Edwards very clearly has a face scan. It doesn't look like Cade Klubnik does, but this photo of Ollie Gordon looks just like him, so it may not just be limited to the guys on the cover. Here's more pictures of the player likenesses, and even if we're probably not going to have many face scans, the player likeness, again, looks a lot different to Madden. I imagine we're going to have a lot more customization regarding hairstyles, facial hair, etc., which is also a huge plus, and I was worried that we weren't going to get that for Madden, but it looks like we will have that here. Let's now talk about the juicy stuff. The gameplay. Again, as I mentioned in the introduction of this video, there are a few really notable changes to gameplay this year that haven't been in an NCAA football game or a Madden in the past. Wear and tear, player abilities, home field advantage, and unique playbooks. So we'll start off with wear and tear, which is basically the new system for players to essentially get banged up over the course of the game or a season. So this will certainly affect your dynasty modes. Wear and tear was meant to be a progressive system that's going to affect you throughout the entire season. As certain body parts get hit more and get hit harder, you're going to have to make challenging decisions on playing certain players through injuries, making certain substitutions, and changing up your play calling. All it takes is one hit for your game or season to be completely affected. So managing wear and tear is going to be ultra important. This isn't really something we've had in a recent football game in the past, but I feel like it really adds to the immersion that coaching staffs have to deal with, not just in college, but in the NFL, of certain players who are playing injured, how it affects them, and possible re-injury risk in the future. The player abilities are so much different to what we've had in Madden with X factors over the last couple of years. I feel like these are going to be way more unique, interesting, and cause more strategy. Let's look at Travis Hunter, for example, who has two different sets of abilities, physicals and mentals. I love that the game is able to differentiate the fact that there are certain players who are just more physically gifted than the rest, and some players who have stronger mental capacity than the rest. Looking at Travis Hunter, for example, he's one of the most explosive and dynamic players in college football, and the game is able to recognize that with his certain abilities, which are going to lead to him being very clearly one of the most talented players on the field at all times, which is just the case in real life. But these mental abilities are also really going to help out your composure, especially in big games. For a guy like Travis Hunter, he's no longer a young freshman. He's been around the block. He's battle-tested, and because of that, he's mentally stronger and a lot smarter than 99% of the players in college football currently. The physical abilities are used to show who the best athletes on the field are. Ball carrier moves, arm strength, and breaking tackles are amongst the many things that will be affected here. Look at Will Johnson making a great play on the ball there to get the interception. Corners are not that smart in Madden, so clearly these gameplay abilities are much different than ones we've seen in the past. Mental abilities look to showcase the smartest players on the field. These measure intangibles, leadership, your ability pre-snap, and how you perform under pressure. Look at a young quarterback like Nico Iamaleava for Tennessee, who likely has a lot of physical abilities, but doesn't have certain mental abilities developed yet, such as the headstrong ability, which affects how you perform on the road. Carson Beck, on the other hand, for Georgia, is an experienced senior, so he's going to have more mental abilities, which will help him in certain environments. Unlike the NFL, superstar talent is not balanced across college football, and the game wants to make it very clear who the most talented players and teams are. While they didn't mention this in the trailer, I would have to imagine you can develop certain abilities on your players as their careers go along, especially mental ones. Let's go back to the Nico Iamaleava comparison. Since he's only a sophomore, he likely doesn't have a lot of mental abilities, but he should have plenty of physical ones. I think by the time he's an upperclassman, he likely will have many of the same mental abilities that a guy like Carson Beck has, which will make Nico the whole package. Pause. Part of what makes college football so great is the atmosphere. EA has already confirmed certain songs and traditions relating to certain teams to be in the game. This all relates to home field advantage, which is obviously a big deal in college football. There are certain environments and atmospheres that are a lot harder to play at others. Look at the University of Michigan, for example, the Big House. That's a pretty big atmosphere. Compare that to UTEP or Sam Houston, and there's going to be a notable difference when you play there, and it's going to be a lot more challenging. Certain players without mental abilities will be more disoriented at certain stadiums, and they're going to have lower composure levels, which will affect how they play. In certain stadiums, you're also going to have a much tougher time running hot routes and audibles. As I mentioned earlier, the atmosphere is what makes college football so great, and EA wants to share the atmosphere that all of these different schools bring to the table. Playbooks is another thing that EA has really focused on, because in college football, there's so many unique playbooks, from the flex bone to the triple option at Air Force. EA wanted to make certain teams and certain playbooks different than the rest, because again, play calling is so different across college football. They also mentioned new reverse handoffs and new trick plays as well, and I wonder if you'll be able to develop certain trick plays on your own, because I feel like that would be a lot of fun. Amongst the smaller gameplay changes, we have revamped passing. This was put in the game to add more control and variation to your passes with a timed button. Variation is something that Kirk Herbstreit specifically highlighted in the gameplay trailer, with variation of throwing styles based on the quarterback and the type of throw that he'll be making. The trailer also highlighted the added control you'll have pre-snap and post-snap. One of my favorite additions was custom route stems. You can make routes go farther down the field or closer to the line of scrimmage. You can also switch defensive players directionally, which is going to give you a lot more control. There's a new kicking meter, there's new hot routes, and many more. I think EA has done a really good job with the gameplay and all of the changes that have been added to EA College Football 25 to make this game significantly different than what we've had in Madden. I'm excited to get more details on Road to Glory and Dynasty over the coming weeks, and I'll be recapping those in future videos. I hope everybody enjoyed this one. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new for more EA 20.